Hello, I'm some guy and I'm going to tell you what happened when I played Dominions 5, which I'm doing at the recommendation of some other guy, I guess. I'm going to play the game on the default settings, and I don't know what I'm doing, so that's going to be the main running theme of this abridged commentary, in which I talk about the most important parts, in my own opinion, of this campaign. Well, here's a particularly important part that I've chosen to show you. You have to name your game. This proved to be more difficult than I expected because only normal file names can be used. Mine was far too out there by the looks of things. Well, I tried to write a different name because I figured maybe it's spaces. It has to have no spaces. That's a very old school thing for file names to require. However, it wasn't quite that easy because in the process of typing my no spaces version, I accidentally clicked on the name which deletes it. Well, it's not going very well so far, and this is absolutely important for things to come with my Dominions 5 experience. We now have to pick an age, which seems to change how important magic is. Well, I went for the middle one because it's the one that requires the least thought to pick, and I guess it's the default option as well. We have a large number of factions to choose from in this game. Well, I don't know anything about any of them. We can mouse over to get a bit of info in the tooltip down there. I ended up going with some kind of Cthulhu-like civilization, these guys the R'hllor, some sort of alien species that fell down into the sea and took over Atlantis. This is a fantasy strategy game, by the way, in case you were wondering, also mixed with a sort of medieval strategy game. We're going to throw in a bunch of random faction AI players into the game. It's going to generate a random map for us, and we're going to fight in some way. Here's a more detailed look at our faction. We have a variety of octopus-like things, some mollusk creatures, various slave things, and perhaps most importantly, we're an underwater civilization. You don't see that very often, so we're going to be conquering the seas to begin with, at least. There was then a section where you set up something to do with your religion. The premise of this game is you're a god vying for contention with other gods on this planet, and the faction you're picking are just kind of like your minions that will try and bring you to glory. Well, there's some stuff you can do here to affect your faction. Let's just say I selected things at random, because that's effectively what I did. I had no idea what I was doing. There is, by the way, a tutorial of sorts for this game that I haven't played, so take note of this. Well, I say played. There was a tutorial button somewhere, but it led me to a 400-page PDF, which looked very difficult to read, and a beginner's guide video series, although it was 5 hours long. So those two lengths put me off entirely actually learning the game. We're doing this the hard way, and we're going to play as this jellyfish. That's just what's happening now. After picking some more default settings, here we are on the map. This map's a little bit misleading at first. It looks like we've got two continents. It's actually wrapping around to the left and right, so this map is a sea part and a land part. Those two land parts are exactly the same. They're so close together that for it to be wrapping around is a little bit confusing really, but here we are. We're going to concern ourselves with the sea for now, of course, because we're in the sea in our little castle. I soon work out that you can click on this list of guys on the left and tell them to move places. So I thought, well, let's move out our jellyfish and our little commander guy to go and occupy these empty sea territories next to me, quote unquote empty. You can see the armies here. We've got loads of little thralled Atlantean slave things with our commander. The jellyfish was just on his own. I didn't consider that to be a problem, but we'll see immediately that it is, because when an area next to you looks empty, it's not necessarily empty, it just means you don't know what's there. So instead, our jellyfish goes out to a bit of sea and starts getting attacked by something, so we'll see the battle system for the first time here. The jellyfish appears to be raising some skeletons from the seabed to fight for me, that's good. But here comes a legion of mermen and a couple of sea trolls or something like that. This is the local population. They don't want the jellyfish to take over this area apparently, and they stab the jellyfish to bits. That's our god out of the picture. That's sort of like the player character, if you like. We therefore will not be having our god on the map. I don't know how big of a disadvantage this is, but it seems like a nice healthy blunder to be making in turn 1. Well, the upside is we can now see the armies next to us after all that. We do have this scout character who can sneak about and reveal what armies are where. So we've got some more information now at least, and we did successfully take over the territory to our east. Fortunately, in turn 2 comes another important discovery: recruiting units. This works in an interesting fashion. You have a pool of resources and recruitment points listed at the bottom there, which replenishes every turn, so you can recruit an amount each turn equal to your resources and recruitment points pool. And if you want, you can tick the little repeat recruitment thing to just constantly spam out trash all the time, and that is how I like to roll, so we're going to be spamming out some trash for a bit. Now, while poking around the buttons on the right, I discovered this research menu. This is often important in strategy games and civilization builder games. Well, in this case, I saw that my research speed was 0 RP per month, and I thought, oh, maybe I don't have a building or something, so I can't do any research. Because of that, I'm not going to be looking at that menu again for an extremely long time because I forgot about it. Don't expect me to do any research in the near future, basically. Now for a look at a more successful battle as we move our troops to the south. Here's our little horde of trash. We've got two kinds of thing, an unarmed thing and an armed thing. Well, they both look like they're going to do the job here. They run forwards while our commander bravely sits at the back of the map. You might note these battles are actually turn-based, really. It's just the turns are happening one after the other, and of course the other important thing to note is that I'm not doing anything. These battle replays I should say, have already happened when you look at them. There is a way to just see what the result was without playing the battle out, but I didn't know about that at this stage, so I was sort of doing this and eyeballing it to guess how it went. And we do need to look at our units and try to work out whether they're good and what kind of capabilities they have. They do have stats, of course, but that's all meaningless without a lot of relative knowledge of what the stats actually mean. Plus, I don't think I'd worked out how to look at the stats by this point. Well, I end up going back to our castle and filling my army with all of the trash I've recruited recently. Then we can take this big pile and go to the west. My goal, of course, is to take revenge for the loss of our noble jellyfish. Now we have a bigger pile of things with some other types of things as well. We've got different kinds of mermaids, or they might actually be tritons or something. There are various kinds of mermaid or merman-like creatures that have different names. And we've got some sea gorillas as well. They're going to do the business. The enemy have actually strengthened themselves since we were last here. There's now an octopus on their side, a kraken the game was calling it. Although it's not that big for a kraken, it appears to be smaller than our sea gorillas. Well, it doesn't do very well because we're just swarming the area with a pure trash wave, a classic plan, and it works as ever. So now we've taken all of the territories around ourselves, and I also took this one to the west one tile further as well. We now theoretically could access the land in the west there. The way it works though, as I later discovered, is that some of your units are classified as amphibious, others are aquatic. The aquatic ones have to stay in the sea, amphibious ones can leave. So if you have an army that only has amphibious units in it, you'll be allowed to move the army onto the land, and that's how we can interact with the land portion of the map. Plus, if you take some of the land portion, you can recruit land units from there. So you recruit things that are sort of native to each tile. If there are some humans on the coast, we can capture the area and make an army of humans to carry on capturing the land. So we aren't trapped in the sea or anything like that, which I was worried about when the game started. We then go after the province just south of the one we just took. This time, a slightly different kind of battle. Well, not really. I thought it might be a slightly different kind of battle because I attacked the province from multiple directions with different armies. So you can see me looking around here thinking, does that make your armies appear in different places on the map? I'm pretty sure it doesn't. It's very simple, this battle system. The two sides just run at each other. You can have some impact on what actually happens by giving some orders prior to the battle. But as noted, these battles have already happened by the time you're watching them, so you can just watch them for your own amusement. There's really no gameplay reason to look at them, as far as I can tell. Here's me finally experimenting with these orders. I think what I'm doing here inadvertently is ordering my mage commander to go into melee. I thought I was ordering the whole army to do something there. I'm pretty sure I'm not. Well, it's not going to make too much of a difference in the near future because we're just spamming all of these enemies with ease. Our mages can fight in melee. There is a really complicated magic system in this game. I'm not sure if I'm supposed to be micromanaging it or something, or trying to get my guys to have certain spells. What we're going to be doing is nothing, and we'll see how far that gets us. Here's me discovering the defense system. You can pay some money to have a garrison in your provinces. Our capital garrison is already quite big, and you can just keep recruiting units here. I didn't want to do this though, because I thought if I have a massive garrison somewhere, it's going to cost me money. I later discovered it doesn't. Garrison units are actually free, so you just buy them and they sit there forever. It's a pretty good investment. Well, I didn't do that because I thought I'll save money to buy more offensive troops and keep spamming out instead, but we'll get back into that much later on. Now, 2 battles occur in the same location at the end of the next turn. I've moved south to take over some more independent territory. So first there's a normal battle where our little crew just spams against a few mermaids and such to take it over, and then we have to defend it against another actual faction. There is another undersea empire to our south, and they're moving up towards us, and we've inadvertently met in the middle. They've got some more serious looking troops, fish things with weapons and armor, but in this case not enough of them to overwhelm my trash. I wonder also if this game has any kind of terrain advantages, because we are slightly on a hill in comparison to them. There are some numbers appearing indicating that something's going on. I think it would be better if the numbers which were damage against you versus damage against them were indicated differently, so you could get an overview of how much damage you're doing just by vaguely looking at the screen. Well, the two sides poke at each other for a while, and we won is the conclusion. The most important takeaway is that we now know there is somebody down there, this pink underwater faction. They're obviously going to be our big rivals. We can also see some humans on the shore. This orange empire is taking over the area. Now, I wasn't worried at all about this because I thought, well, I'm an underwater faction. They can't come down to attack me, but I can go to attack them, so I have the advantage in this regard. It turns out that's not true, and again, we'll get back to that later. Looks like I've finally discovered how to look at the stats of units and find out their traits. It's not doing me much good because I don't really know what the stats mean, but I have at least seen the numbers. That's progress. Next, I turned back to the north to take a territory behind the one I just took so that we're more linked up with our own capital, and to link up with troops coming down from the north, because I've got some good troops here who join the battle. The problem with our good troops is they have the wrong orders, so we see our trash running forwards, and our good troops sit at the back guarding our commanders. So we need to play with the orders to make them attack and actually use those higher quality troops. In this case though, we don't really need them because our wave of trash goes out to destroy them. I suppose that's what our squiddish overlordy species wants to do. They just want to watch the trash go and slaughter our foes. Now it's rush time. We're just going to collect together everything we can near the front, recruiting constantly all the time, and just throw it at this pink faction to try and knock them out of the seas as early as possible. Looks like I'm actually coming up with some tactics here, telling a mage to stay behind our troops. I'm also trying to put together a land-capable army because I had a side project I wanted to do while rushing south, and that is to have an army go and capture bits of the land to the flanks of our starting area, so we can just have that foothold and see how it works really at this stage in the game. As we march to make an attack to the south, we get news that we've lost some troops due to them being crippled or something, or some crippled troops died of attrition. Something bad happened while our guys were moving, so there's some kind of mechanic there that I'm not paying attention to. Well, it looks like we won a battle and captured a territory from the pink guys, so that's what we want to see. We want to just knock them out as soon as possible, because if we can get 2 factions worth of territory at the start of the game, we'll have an advantage over other factions who may not have done that. I'm going to try and take this bit of sea over here in the top right corner, and that's going to be a mistake because I just sent a few bits and bobs to do it. So here's our first defeat in battle, as the local independent forces have better fish guys than us. They seem to have weapons, we don't really seem to have weapons, and we are routed. So some of your troops survive and you can use them for something else, but looks like I can't spam nothing and still win. We need to actually spam the numbers in the numbers spamming strat. Here's the main battle of this turn, where once again I have failed to get my main troops to advance. Fortunately, there's no battle whatsoever because the Pelagian force just runs off and takes a few casualties as they go, so there we have that. Now we're next to the enemy's capital, so I thought, well, let's just spam our way on in there and maybe take out their main troop production centre. That will allow us to win this war at our leisure. I thought I'd add a little side note, because you might have seen me kind of selecting things and then accidentally unselecting them over and over again. This game has a controversial mouse use control scheme. where you left click to give orders and right click to select stuff. Basically the other way around to everything else. So that caused a lot of confusion, but it's going to fade over time. You do get used to it. Now we have a couple of battles to look at, but notably not the one I ordered, the thing where we attack the enemy capital. So we'll look into that situation in a second. First, we've got an easier one. I sent some guys to take the territory next to me. I say some guys, some fish things and a octopus guy mage to rule them. Well, the enemy only had a tiny group here, so we just take them down. I thought there would be nothing here. I hadn't quite cottoned on to the idea that the enemy could be doing that defense spending thing to have free, invisible units that you can't see on the campaign map. Well, we'll talk about that another time. Here's the main action of the turn. We're being attacked. Our main force got spammed by various things. And if you're attacked, you can't move essentially. So that means we can't leave this province and attack them. That's going to cause an ongoing issue for our rushing plan. Well, at least the plan to take bits of the land is now coming together. There's another of those misclicks, accidentally ordering my guys to walk the wrong way. We're going to send some troops up onto the land to see what they can see. Meanwhile, on the seabed, we've got this massive pile of assorted fish slave creatures that I'm going to send out to do something. There are more sea tiles we can capture. I'm just leaving these ones for now because I was prioritizing taking down a real player that's more of a threat. These independent territories, I think they just sit there, so we can take them at our leisure. Well, I sent our fish guys out to do something against a weaker looking group. We don't really know what all the units are, so while it does tell you some of the units that are there, I didn't have much intel about where was the best place to go. Another turn passes where we, again, were unable to make the attack I was ordering, simply because we're attacked again by something else. These guys surround us on many sides, so they can keep sending groups in to attack us and keep us in position. They could even just sacrifice units to stop us from advancing by triggering a battle with 2 guys or something. Seems pretty exploitable, especially in a real multiplayer situation against another human, where it would be easier to organize sending 1 troop into all of your enemy's territories each turn to be annoying. Well, here's our attack on land. We're going to be facing some humans up here. They come at us with some heavy cav, which I thought might be an issue because our guys are essentially trash. Most of our troops are just kind of like slaves. They have super low morale and low stats. It seems some magic was happening though. We do have our mages at the back, and the knights kind of get taken out or turned to stone or something. And then our little group, while it takes pretty hefty casualties, does eventually work its way through the enemy formation, and we capture a bit of the land, so that is a turn up for the books. As for the fighting in the sea, here's my big blob of things I sent to steal some independent territory. Unfortunately, they are facing a blob of slightly better things, I imagine. We rout anyway and run away. That's the downside of all of our slave troops. I think they're really cheap. They don't cost much upkeep to have all of that trash. They just also don't do anything unless maybe they have a really strong commander. Our enemies make a counterattack in the area to the left of where my main force is and successfully scatter us. Our merfolk didn't really fight at all in that battle, unfortunately. So we're still very surrounded here in our frontline position, and that's just going to prevent us from being able to make my rush plan work. At this stage, after a couple of turns of not being able to move, I thought maybe we should just go after those other territories, since we're not able to move very well with them there, and they're probably going to be easier to capture too. So here we are going after a couple at the same time. It doesn't quite work out as expected, just because again our main force is all stacked together in a province that can be attacked by a couple of guys coming from the other side, which is what's happening in this battle right here. This time some different looking stuff is coming. These are the units that are native to like the southeast portion of the sea, I later learned, so they're coming from that direction essentially. Another wave of spam, and we're going to win this one again, but we are taking attrition with all these battles. The enemy can recruit things much faster in their core territory than me. There's a system of dominionship, which I think defines what is like your territory and what is occupied territory. I don't even nearly understand it, and I haven't really looked into that quite yet. I'm just rushing very blindly at the moment. Well, it's going okay so far. We sort of have these guys on the back foot, but we don't have the momentum to make the final push. We're taking bits of their lesser defended territory, we're defeating their armies and their units, but we're probably at a disadvantage just because we can't get as much stuff down to this end of the map. I have already played on a couple of hours ahead at the time of recording this, So I know it's going to be a bit of a mess, and I'm going to abridge it quite a lot if I can and speed through things. We're going to have some back and forth going on here, with me gradually learning more and more mechanics of the game with every terrible disaster, etc., including things like the ability of land units to actually attack underwater, which was a bit surprising. We'll see some of that, and none of your advice you're surely giving me in the comments in the coming parts, but that advice might be followed in much later parts, so do feel free to spam some beginner's advice into the comments if it's less than 400 pages or 5 hours of video content. I might actually look through it and use it. We'll see.